All right, hi everyone. I feel like this panel in some ways is like the start of a joke. It's a conservative environmentalist, environmental justice activist, and a climate psychologist walking into a bar. But I guess we're walking into an event here, and I think we have some really diverse viewpoints in this panel. I'm super excited to talk with you about how to make friends of many stripes. And so, Benji, I actually want to start with you. It's a very polarized environment right now around climate and the environment. And yet we saw that the President Donald Trump signed an executive order recently called Make America Beautiful Again, focused on public lands. I don't think that we necessarily think of this administration as being very friendly to the environment, yet clearly it is in this case, and you have some interesting friends there. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how did you make that happen?
Yeah, well, first of all, good afternoon. It's great to be here. I grew up in a family that was in Wisconsin. They were vegan conservatives in the state of Wisconsin. So if you do the math in your head, it's kind of like this panel. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I'd argue that this is what we need more of right here. And so I just want to start out with that. I think our country is really reeling from a partisan and polarization standpoint. I think that's only going to get worse. We're getting in our own echo chambers so much that we can't even think outside the box, and all of our echo chambers are shrinking because we're not willing to think outside of it. And so I think this is a really critical conversation to have right now. I have been critical of the president for most of my life, and that didn't preclude me from trying to make the most out of a situation that we are currently in. And I think what we found is that we took a massive hunting and fishing group, a massive conservation group on the center left, a massive conservation group on the center right, and my new organization, Is Nonpartisan. And we said, on behalf of millions of Americans, we all want the same things when it comes to clean air, clean water, having a healthier environment. And we were the only ones that were even trying that message at all. And the president listened over the course of many, many months. Of course, there were very tough days, and there were, of course, people working against us. But we were able to get the first pro-environment thing done of this administration, which was, thank you, which was an executive order that was signed a few weeks ago called Make America Beautiful Again. I don't even really want to celebrate that yet, though, because we need to see something get done from it, right? So I totally understand that. But what I will say is that there's a lot of hope for doing so. We helped kill off a 3 million acre sale of public lands that was proposed in the reconciliation bill, and that was killed off not because liberals opposed it, but because liberals and conservatives opposed it. That's why it got killed. If conservatives didn't stand up and oppose that, it would have gotten done, and 3 million acres would have been sold off, no matter how many Democrats were opposed to it. So the future of environmental action has to be across party lines, otherwise we won't get what we want, except for every 4 years when one side gets in office. And so that's the future of the environmental movement that we're building. I'm willing to work with anyone. I'm willing to sit down with anybody, even if I hate them on every single other thing, and try to have a cordial conversation, because this is one of those few issues that should get out of the culture wars. We proved that even Trump could get out of it for one executive order. Let's build on that.
Rev, I see you nodding along, and I'm kind of curious.
I'm thinking about getting one of those, I guess, a MABA hat. MABA, right?
MABA.
Make America.
That's the B in your hat right there, right?
I might not get a MAGA hat, but I might get a MABA hat. I don't know.
I can get you one.
I may or may not take it.
We're serious friends up here.
Just keeping it a buck, you know what I mean?
But Rev, I'm wondering if you can tell me, I'm guessing your relationship isn't quite the same with this administration as it was with the previous one. And so now you're kind of working from the outside. And I'm wondering if you can tell me a bit about how you're kind of building a coalition that can work to be resilient to both the administration and what it seems to be its real strong pushback and rollbacks of environmental justice and climate goals.
Yeah. I mean, the key thing, and I think actually I really appreciate Benji for what he's doing. We have to do that. I'm as this America, as Earthlings, we have to make sure we do all we can for this planet. And to your point, I don't really care who's in the White House. What I care about is making sure that that humans survive this planet. Mm-hmm. And what I care about is the fact of the matter that we can have situations like we had just last week, when we had people who died in floods, children washed away, and we just moving on like nothing happening. LA was on fire, moving on like nothing happened. Phoenix in Seattle was on fire. People here in Seattle, homeless, was sticking to the street because the sidewalks were so hot. We moved on like nothing happened. So I don't care. I mean, so for me, I'm just working to stop that. And so the thing to stop that for me is that we got to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy, step one. Step two, I think we got to get beyond petrochemicals. And I think that's the most important thing. There's a fierce urgency of now to stop the expansion of petrochemicals. I know Heather McTeer-Tony is here somewhere in the audience. And you should definitely see her and go to beyondpetrochemicals.org. But I think that's the key thing, because Jane Fonda said it best. The assault, particularly on communities of color, young people, queer communities, poor people, black or white. The fact that we're putting things around them. I'm from Louisiana, if y'all didn't know that. I was born right outside of Cancer Alley. I don't know if you know what Cancer Alley is. I know what see your hands. If you know what Cancer Alley, raise your hands. All right, this is the Bloomberg crowd, so y'all know, y'all checking it out. But Cancer Alley is an 85-mile stretch of land between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and it has so many petrochemical facilities that are there. And so I just bring that up from the standpoint that those are killing American citizens, and those companies are not American companies. And so we're literally letting foreign companies bringing petrochemicals and plastics into our community. So my whole thing is the fierce urgency of now. Is that I can't afford to worry about who's in the White House, and I don't have the privilege to wait for the next person to be in the White House when people are dying in Cancer Alley.
And I think, Leslie, I think I heard two things in this, what Reverend just said. I mean, one of them is the fact that we have people that all these disasters you named, people moved on. They heard it, they moved on. And then we also have this real urgency of now, this real human side of what's happening with the climate and with the petrochemical industry. So I want to start with the first part of that, though, which is the idea of people moving on or shutting down, as the case may be. And we're seeing that both in the way that we treat disasters, but also even in things like corporate earnings calls. We've seen a drop in climate across the board. So we have less people talking about this with their neighbors. We have less people talking about their shareholders. I'm wondering if you can give us a little sort of insight into how we get people to stop shutting down and maybe instead opening up to talking about this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we hear the phrase a lot, especially as it relates to the business world, of we can't do business as usual anymore. And my question is how deep can we go with that question? Including how we acknowledge to ourselves and each other the fear, the distress, the concern, the thoughts, because even though surveys show that the level of eco-anxiety and related environmental distress is high and on the rise, it's still not talked about. And people do that in isolation. And one of the things that is essential in so many aspects of this is about establishing connection. And I don't even mean just talk about it to your friends, talk about it at the dinner table. I think it has an important role in the workplace. The title of this talk, or the description, was about, how do we get other people on board? How do we convince others? But that right away sets up an us and them, because we've got the answer and we need to make sure that they get on our team. When one of the most overlooked aspects of communication is listening, is opening it up to let me hear what's causing you to hesitate, to turn away. Because unfortunately, given our evolutionary psychology, we are wired to shut down, to turn away, to do some version of business as usual when we start to feel overwhelmed. So it might sound like a soft science, or this is sort of a distraction. I actually think if we could allow that to enter into the conversations, it's going to open things up. It's going to make it easier to be more effective and to move forward and to think outside of the box.
Yeah. And I'm curious, Benji, how are you getting, you talked a little bit about how you got the administration to listen to you. How are you getting others who may not necessarily think conservative, climate, yes, how are you getting folks to kind of listen to this outside of the conservative space as well?
Well, I mean, it is all about language, and let me just tell you, I wrote a book called The Conservative Environmentalist, and the biggest piece of advice I would give to anybody is don't title your book The Conservative Environmentalist, because environmentalists hate it and conservatives hate it because they hate the other word. But it's my publisher loved that. But it's a really good case study as to why the communication and the words matter, and that goes to listening. You know, I used to believe that climate deniers were like these evil people who didn't have the same worldview as I did and hated the planet. And when I realized that there's actually, I mean, there's people perpetuating climate denial, but there's also the people believing it. The people believing it are really amazing people who go to work every day, just try to feed their families and go on with their lives, and they don't feel like they're represented in the conversation. That's really at the core of why they feel like it's not real. They're worried about the solutions. They're worried about it harming their communities. They're worried about having their jobs taken away. And if you don't listen to that, then you wouldn't know that. And so I think what the climate movement has completely failed at is figuring out how to reach the other 60 to 70% of America that doesn't think about climate change every day in the way that this room maybe thinks about climate change, the way that I think about climate change. And of course I think it's an existential threat. Of course I have, I want net zero goals. Of course I want all that stuff, but that doesn't resonate with everybody. I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin. My high school was across the street from a dairy farm. If you're a dairy farmer, you're not thinking about sea level rise, right? You're thinking about trying to make sure that your crops are healthy and that your agricultural fields are healthy. And so that's a very different conversation. And when you don't have that understanding and you haven't listened, it's easy to shut those walls up. And, people are always like, well, I've saw my crazy conservative uncle at Thanksgiving, and he was saying that climate change wasn't real. It's like, well, ask him why he doesn't think climate change is real. Ask him what he's fearful of. Try to get to the bottom of it so that you can understand that there's always a reason behind it, and it's not because they're funded by big oil. It's your uncle. So, so I think that we've villainized this huge part of the population that just is not on the same page as us. But that doesn't mean they don't care, and that doesn't mean they don't have some of the same motives. Some of the biggest I was at an event. Last thing I'll say on this is I was at an event at CU Boulder. There's a climate denier in the audience. She got really upset at me for caring about climate change, and she's like, well, I just don't get it because I love hiking and I love skiing and I love being outdoors and I just don't believe in climate change. And I'm like, okay, well, this person I can work with because they actually have the same end goal. They want to protect the environment, but they feel like the climate change conversation has come at a direct threat to their political beliefs or something else. And she and I ended up having a great conversation and came to the same conclusion after I understood why she didn't believe climate change was real. So it goes to what you were talking about. It's totally a listening thing, and we preach too much. We don't listen enough.
That's right. And let me just add, I think it's really useful to even lift off the term climate change because it makes more room for ways people can come together, whether it's clean air, the cleaning up the environment, whatever it may be.
Right.
Completely. Can I add a but to that, though?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I get that, and we all gonna leave the stage and go back and be friends in the green room. So I want nobody to take what I'm gonna say like it's not that way, because we are gonna do that. But there's a but, and there is sometimes a right or wrong. And there are things that with fossil fuels is killing us. And so it'd be very equivalent to my ancestors going through slavery. And but the people in the big house are really nice people. They okay. I'm out there on the plantation. I'm like, man, I want to get off this plantation. That's real. I don't want to be here. And so I don't want to hear that I'm a slave. I don't want to hear my freedom is not available. I don't want to hear I can't marry who I want to marry if I'm queer. I don't want to hear if I'm a woman or I'm non-binary. I can't have the rights. There's some things that are going to be right and wrong. And fossil fuels is wrong. And it's causing us to be on a direct pathway. If someone's business plan is a death sentence for our communities, that's wrong. And so we got to stand up. Now, we can be friends. I got uncles, too, who I sit around with, you know what I mean? And we can debate it. And they're good. I remember Benji, they're good people. They're not saying that. But then this is where narrative comes in. I was so glad that Lindsay and Anna and Jordan from Good Energy had their conversation yesterday, because what we're losing on is narrative. I've always said that, yes, we're in a climate crisis, but the problem with the movement is that we are also in a crisis of imagination. And so how do we figure that out? How do we tell the story so the crazy uncle who is right, wants a good job, but doesn't understand that your job is killing you? That lump on your chest? That now we praying for you, Unc, because you got a lump on your chest, Unc, and you peeing blood, Unc? No, that's not a good job, Unc, when you peeing blood. So that's why I'm so glad that with like Beyond Petrochemicals, when that campaign first started, man, we have so far killed 26 projects. That equates to 40 billion tons of carbon emissions. And it stops the toxins in the air, which means that even in Cancer Alley, I get phone calls every day from people who are dying. I got a phone call yesterday from somebody whose dog died because of cancer. When people's dogs are dying, dogs are literally having lumps on their bodies, and they're dying. You petting your dog and it's a lump that's growing because we don't want to transition, then that's wrong. And so I'm just saying here that if we got children being swept away, we got dogs with cancer, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry, because I'm hoping that this Bloomberg recording will get out 100 years from now, and they'd be like, man, there was a guy on that stage with a funny-looking jacket, and he was up there talking and yelling and screaming, and they're gonna be like, I don't know what he was talking about, but for some reason that panel up there and the people in the audience did something, and we still have clean air and clean water in Seattle.
Yes.
That's important to me.
Let's say, I feel like, we're talking about the importance of narrative. This is a narrative, isn't it? And I'm curious, how do you, this is a very personal narrative, but for folks in this audience, how do they share their narratives, their experience with climate change? Because this is a very serious and extreme examples we've all experienced at some point in our lives. And so how can people go about sharing those narratives to engage others around them to also act?
Well, I'll just add, Bell Hooks said it best. The rage of the oppressed is not the same as the rage of the privileged. And so our stories are going to look different. And so I think the first thing in that is to realize that sometimes we have been telling our stories to we need data and research, and we definitely I'm a fan, and it's such an important piece to just put forth good stories. But on top of that, I think that we have given our lens of storytelling through what I would call a very white paper energy. Some of y'all ain't get that joke, but some of y'all may get it later on. And in the lens of that, I think that we're telling a story thinking that we're going to out-convince people about certain things and not having the compassion or love. And we gotta tell stories, honestly, y'all. We gotta tell stories that are flawed. I also work along with Netflix. And one of the things at Netflix is that they say that a lot of climate stories aren't that good because all of our characters are like perfect characters, like they have no flaws to them, and so they just like people can't really just do what Benji was saying. They can't connect. But the problem there with that is this: let's actually just be human to them. Let's have the scientist who's solving the climate crisis who's also an addict. Let's have when I had to go through Hurricane Katrina, but during Hurricane Katrina, even with the floods rising, people did two things. They figured out how to make, with no power and water rising, they figured out how to make gumbo, and they figured out how to make love. I don't know how they did either one of them, but they figured out how to do it. But tell that story. Yeah. Tell stories of narrative, and I think that's it. And then also just make sure that America, one thing, the climate movement doesn't own climate change as an issue. It's about humanity. So that's the first thing. Don't stop acting like you own this issue. And the second thing, this is an international issue. So for instance, like I know we have COP30 coming up, but we also have COP31. The INC 5.2 is coming up with regards to the plastic treaty, which then leads to COP31 in Australia. Let's make sure that we are living beyond that. But I just want to say this, make sure we're telling stories. And I hope that if there are folks who are watching this who are in Texas or Illinois or for our in LA or my folks in New Orleans, I hope that the death of whoever you lost, I pray that we can not only tell good stories, but we can hold the camera while crying. And we can hold that camera while crying to ensure those stories get out.
in a lot of ways, you described. I'm thinking about yesterday's talk with Jane Fonda, and we did a live poll, and folks said the stories they most wanted to hear were stories that were about human stories with climate in the background, not necessarily the foreground. And I think that's in a lot of ways what we're hearing here as well.
I do just want to push back a little bit. And again, we are going to hug after this, so that's the good part. But I've spent a lot of the last few years going to these communities in these traditional energy communities. And the problem with what you're saying with reaching those people, which they are critical to getting things done, and of course there's a certain percentage that's not going to listen, never going to listen to us, and we can't really communicate, but there's a huge percentage that can. They don't think their job's killing people, and they don't think it's killing themselves. They believe it's powering people and powering communities. I mean, 80% of the world is reliant on fossil fuels to survive. It's not just about killing people. It's about powering people's lives. I mean, I spent a whole week in Midland, Texas. I don't think anyone dreams of spending a week in Midland, Texas. But I have a newfound appreciation for the people there because I went there and I understood why they do what they do. They are so proud to feel like they're powering the world with energy so people can have cost-effective energy to live their lives. They don't think that they're killing people. And so if you go to them with that message, you have completely alienated them. They are completely gone. And I'm sorry, but that's the problem. That message is the problem because it hits people into a corner. Yeah. And we are in our corners way too often. The belief for climate change is going down right now.
That's right.
It's going down. And we've tried everything to shame people and blame people and put them in their place and tell them that they're doing things wrong and that they're killing everybody. But if we keep telling them that, then we are going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
So we got to figure this out. And we're not going to do it by blaming people who are just trying to wake up and make ends meet every day, especially when a lot of those people have the same connection to nature and the environment that we all share here. I hike and I ski and I love the environment just as much as anybody else. But so does somebody who works on an oil field. They are often avid outdoorsmen, and they love spending time in the outdoors. The Cabela's shopper and the REI shopper want the same things. They want clean air, and they want clean water, and they want to be able to recreate outdoors. So until we figure out how to get on the same page, we will continue to lose. And as we've been talking about on stage here today, we cannot afford to lose anymore. We need to build a winning coalition of people across the political spectrum, or we will never create the solutions that we need. The environment deserves more than these boxes that we put ourselves in, and we've got to figure out how to communicate better.
And I just want to say, I hear you. And no, definitely, give it up. I hear that. That's important. I think the key thing there is keeping it real with whoever it is. I think it's not about shaming, but about letting somebody. I want to know if I'm on a job that's causing me to and sometimes you make a decision. Let's be clear, I work all every place to make a decision on that. But I just want to say that it's not about shaming, because the goal here, for me, how do we change Cancer Alley to Solutions Alley?
Right.
How do we get rid of the companies that are hurting and actually move to companies that are actually helping? So I'm with you. If it's about that. But I just also want to make sure, because we talked about this backstage. I remember going to East Palestine, Ohio, right? I remember going to East Palestine, Ohio, and I actually told the last administration they need to show up there, and they didn't show up because the idea, again, the climate movement was that environmental justice was a black, brown, or indigenous issue, and it wasn't a conservative white issue. Right. So I went there, right? I went there, me and Aaron Brockovich went to East Palestine, Ohio. And I went there because I had gone through the pain of Katrina. And I had gone through other pains of folks doing petrochemicals in Cancer Alley. And I will tell you, when I got there, people had on, they didn't have on MAGA hats, they had on MAGA hats and MAGA t-shirts. But they had gone through a tragedy. And I will tell you, they came and they heard and they saw me. And I have never been hugged by so many white people in my life who was just wanted to be human and to connect, and they wanted to, and they themselves had felt forgotten by both parties. And so I'm with you. I think what we're having now is a real conversation about where do we go as a movement. And so I agree. We are not here to shame nobody. We're not here to throw them under the bus, but there is a situation where we gotta be real, and we gotta have real solutions to help us transition from fossil fuels to clean energy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I want this conversation to keep going. I think we have to, unfortunately, give the stage to the next folks. But thank you all for being here. And I think let's go hug it out backstage.
We'll hug it backstage.
Thank you, everybody.